Disclaimer: This story is a fictional narrative inspired by real human emotions and experiences. It explores the themes of desire, emotional disconnect, and infidelity. While names, events, and places may resemble real life, this story is purely imaginative and created for entertainment purposes. Viewer discretion is advised, as the story may contain emotionally intense situations and mature themes not suitable for all audiences. I never imagined that a simple workout routine could become the starting point of something so complicated. My name's Emma. I'm 34, married for the last 7 years, and stuck in a life that looks perfect on the outside, but feels numb on the inside. My husband, Josh, is a good man. Responsible. Routine. Predictable. And that predictability slowly became my cage. I had joined the local gym more out of boredom than fitness. Every morning felt the same: silent breakfasts, rushed goodbyes, and evenings filled with half-hearted conversations. I needed a reason to breathe, something to shake up my monotony. But I didn't expect him. It was my 3rd week at the gym when I first noticed his eyes on me. At first, I thought I was imagining things. I'd be stretching, warming up, and out of the corner of my eye, I could feel his gaze. Not the creepy kind, but curious, lingering. Focused. I avoided looking directly at him, pretending to concentrate on my movements, but deep down, a strange flutter began to grow in my chest. He was always there. Same time. Same corner. Same calm, unreadable face. I started noticing things: his toned arms, the quiet confidence in his posture, the way he never seemed to be distracted by anyone but me. Every day, his eyes found me. And even though he never said a word, I could feel it. He was watching me. The weird part? I didn't hate it. It had been a long time since someone looked at me like that. Not like I was a wife. Not like I was a tired woman holding her life together with coffee and denial. He looked at me like I was something worth looking at. And slowly, that gaze became a part of my day, something I secretly waited for. I remember the morning it hit me. I was fixing my hair in the gym mirror when our eyes locked. I froze. He didn't. He simply held my gaze. Not in a challenging way, but in a way that said, "I see you." I felt exposed. Not physically, but emotionally. Like he could see right through the smile I wore like armor. That night, I lay in bed next to Josh, staring at the ceiling. He was already asleep, his back to me. I could still feel the heat of the stranger's eyes. It wasn't love. It wasn't lust. Not yet. But it was something dangerous. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. And the worst part? I liked it. The following week, something shifted. It was a Tuesday morning, cool, quiet, and uneventful like most others. I arrived at the gym with my earbuds in, pretending to scroll through my playlist while secretly scanning the room for him. And there he was, already on the treadmill, his eyes locked on me the moment I walked in. But this time, he smiled. A slow, knowing smile. Not forced or flirtatious, but confident and warm. The kind of smile that says, "I've been waiting for you." My heart stuttered. I didn't smile back. I looked away quickly, pretending to be flustered by something on my phone. But inside, I was a mess of electricity. That smile followed me through every rep, every breath, every minute I spent on that gym floor. It wasn't just a look anymore. It was an invitation, an acknowledgement, a challenge. And I didn't know whether to run from it or walk straight toward it. I told myself it was harmless. Just attention. A boost to my ego. Nothing more. But that night, as I stood in the kitchen chopping vegetables while Josh scrolled through his emails, I caught myself thinking about that smile. Replaying it like a scene from a movie. Feeling it echo in the places inside me that had gone cold over the years. Josh didn't notice. He rarely did. He mumbled something about a meeting tomorrow and asked me to pass the salt. I smiled and did as he asked, but my mind was far from the dinner table. It was still back at the gym, with that man, and that smile that refused to leave me alone. The next day, I put on a tighter top for the gym. Not revealing. Just fitted. I told myself it was just because it was clean. But deep down, I wanted him to notice. And when I walked in, he did. Our eyes met again, and this time, I smiled back. We didn't talk, not yet. But that look between us lingered longer than it should have. I caught my breath and kept moving, heart pounding like I'd just sprinted a mile. I was flirting. Quietly. Subtly. But undeniably. That night, I avoided looking at myself in the mirror. I felt guilty. For what? A look? A smile? A secret thrill I hadn't felt in years? Yes, for all of it. But guilt wasn't strong enough to drown out desire. It was soft, but steady. Like a flame slowly licking the edges of something fragile. And I was letting it burn. As I lay in bed next to my husband once again, his familiar breathing beside me, I didn't feel comfort. I felt distance. A growing space between the life I had and the one I was flirting with in silence. And somewhere in the dark, a thought whispered through me, he can't stop looking at me, and maybe I don't want him to. I kept telling myself it was just harmless. Just a phase. A little spark to distract me from the dull routine of my marriage. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true anymore. What was happening wasn't just inside my head, it was real. And it was growing stronger by the day. It was Thursday when we finally spoke. I was adjusting the weight bench when I heard a voice behind me, smooth and confident. Need a spot? I turned, already knowing it was him. He was standing there, towel slung over his shoulder, sweat glistening on his jawline, his expression calm but intense. Up close, he was even more attractive. Not just physically, but the way he carried himself. Controlled. Present. Alive. I should have said no. But I smiled and nodded. Yeah, actually, thanks. He helped adjust the barbell, and for a few brief seconds, his fingers brushed mine. A jolt passed through me, sharp and undeniable. I felt it. He felt it. We both knew. I've seen you around, he said casually. You always focus hard. Impressive. I tried to laugh it off. Well, that's the whole point of coming here, right? He smiled again, the same one that had haunted me for days. Not everyone's as committed as you. His words didn't feel like small talk. They felt like compliments wrapped in curiosity. I wanted to end the conversation, to walk away before it became something more. But instead, I stayed. I'm Lucas, by the way. Emma, I replied, voice softer than I meant it to be. Emma, he repeated, letting my name linger in the air. Nice to finally meet you. That word, finally, hit something deep in my stomach. I didn't tell him I was married. I didn't tell him I had a husband who was probably making his lunch at home, completely unaware that his wife was caught in a slow-burning flirtation with a stranger. I didn't even mention Josh's name. And for a brief moment, it felt good to be just Emma, not someone's wife, not someone's responsibility. Just a woman, being seen. We only spoke for a few minutes, but that brief exchange lingered with me all day. I found myself checking my phone, hoping he'd find some excuse to message me, only to realize I hadn't even given him my number. Yet, that night, I sat in bed scrolling through my camera roll and paused on a selfie I took earlier that week at the gym. It wasn't for anyone, but now I stared at it differently. Was this what Lucas saw? Someone who still had light in her eyes? Josh walked into the room, asking about laundry or something else equally mundane. I nodded, answered, smiled politely, and returned to my thoughts the moment he left. Something had begun. I didn't know where it would go. I didn't even know what I truly wanted. But I knew one thing for sure, I wanted to see him again. I wasn't expecting to see him the next day. But there he was by the water fountain, towel in hand, leaning casually against the wall as if he had all the time in the world. And when he saw me, he smiled like we were already something. Hey, Emma, he said, his voice low and familiar. I was hoping I'd run into you again. I felt the warmth rush to my cheeks and something inside me twisted with guilt, but it didn't stop me from smiling back. I'm pretty consistent, I replied, gripping the strap of my gym bag a little tighter. That day, we didn't work out near each other. But he waited for me outside. As I stepped into the morning sun, I saw him standing by his car. Can I walk you to yours? He asked. I could have said no, but I didn't. We walked in silence for a few moments before he glanced sideways and said, I'd really like to see you again, outside the gym. That was the moment. The edge of the cliff. I felt my body tensing, my heart drumming in my ears. Everything I had, my home, my marriage, my normal life, stood behind me. And ahead of me, temptation, danger, and something too enticing to ignore. Still, I asked the question, why me? His answer was instant. Because when you walk into a room, you don't even realize the way you light it up. But I do. My breath caught. I reached into my bag, pulled out a piece of paper, and scribbled down my number with a shaky hand. "Text me," I said, almost in a whisper. That night, I was folding laundry in the bedroom when my phone buzzed. My hands froze. Unknown number. "I've been thinking about you since I got home. I hope that's not too forward." I stared at the screen for what felt like forever. My heart was pounding again. I glanced toward the kitchen where Josh was making a sandwich, completely unaware of the moment I was drowning in. I replied, "Me, you're not too forward. I've been thinking too." It was like opening a dam. The texts kept coming. First innocent, then slowly more personal. He asked about my day, my favorite music, how I liked my coffee. Then, late that night, "Lucas, I haven't stopped picturing you in that red top from yesterday. You looked beautiful." I read that message 5 times. Josh was snoring lightly next to me, hand resting on my waist, the same way it always did. But it didn't feel like affection anymore, it felt like routine. Like muscle memory. And suddenly, I felt a wave of emotions crashing down. Shame, thrill, guilt, desire, all tangled together. I typed back, deleting and rewriting the message over and over before settling on one sentence. "Me, maybe I wore it for you." And just like that, I crossed an invisible line. It wasn't just a look anymore. It wasn't just a smile. This was real. And something inside me had officially awakened. It started with a suggestion, simple, harmless. "Lucas, let's grab coffee sometime. Just talk. No pressure." I stared at the message for a long moment. It was just coffee, right? But we both knew it was more than that. Still, I told myself that talking in public wouldn't be a betrayal. I wasn't meeting him in a hotel room. I wasn't crossing that line. Yet, a deeper part of me already knew I was preparing to. The next morning, I told Josh I had errands to run. He barely looked up from his laptop. "Don't forget the dry cleaning," he mumbled. I didn't correct him. I just kissed his cheek and walked out the door, into something I didn't fully understand yet. Lucas had chosen a quiet cafe downtown, tucked between a bookstore and a florist. When I walked in, he was already seated by the window, 2 coffees on the table, one for me black, just like I told him in our texts. He stood when he saw me, smiling the same way he always did, like I was the only person in the room. I felt my breath catch. "You look incredible," he said softly. "Thank you," I murmured, sliding into the chair across from him. I tried to steady my hands, wrapping them around the warm cup like it could anchor me. We talked. About everything and nothing. His job. My freelance writing. I didn't mention I was mostly a stay-at-home wife. His love for music. My secret dream of traveling alone. It all came out so easily, so naturally. It had been years since I'd felt so seen. He asked questions. Real ones. About who I was before marriage. Before routine swallowed me. And the way he looked at me when I answered. God, it was dangerous. At one point, our fingers brushed on the table. Neither of us pulled away. And suddenly, the air around us grew thick with tension. His voice dipped lower, more intimate. "You know I haven't stopped thinking about you since that first day I saw you, right?" My pulse quickened. I looked away, pretending to smile, but I was trembling. "I shouldn't be here," I whispered, more to myself than to him. "But you are," he replied. "And you know why?" I met his eyes, and for the first time, I didn't look away. A long silence passed between us, heavy and filled with everything we weren't saying. Then, his hand reached across the table, resting lightly on mine. His thumb traced gentle circles on my skin. My body stiffened, then melted. "I want to kiss you," he said. "But I won't. Not yet." I exhaled a shaky breath. When I finally pulled my hand away, it wasn't because I didn't want him to touch me. It was because I did. That night, Josh noticed something different. While brushing his teeth, he looked at me through the mirror and said, "You've been quiet lately. Is everything okay?" I smiled at him. The same practiced, perfect smile I'd worn for years. "Yeah, I'm just tired." But I wasn't tired. I was unraveling. and I wasn't sure I wanted to stop. The next time I saw him at the gym, something was different. There were no words between us, just that same heat. The unspoken electricity that had slowly gone from a flicker to a flame. I walked past him on my way to the yoga mats, and I felt his eyes on me. Like he wasn't just watching, but consuming every part of me. And this time, I didn't pretend not to notice. Instead, I turned my head, just slightly, and met his gaze over my shoulder. My lips curved into the faintest smile. I held that smile for a second too long. A deliberate second. That was the moment I gave him permission. I wasn't playing the innocent anymore. I wanted him to look. To feel what I felt, desire with no boundaries. A craving neither of us could suppress any longer. After the session ended, I took my time in the locker room. My heart was racing. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what was waiting outside that door. But I knew I wasn't going back to who I was before. When I stepped out, the parking lot was half empty. The late afternoon sun hung low, painting everything in a golden hue. I was heading to my car when I heard his voice behind me. I was hoping you wouldn't leave without saying anything. I turned slowly. Lucas stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable, but his eyes burned. I didn't know what to say, I replied, my voice low, breath uneven. He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. His voice dropped. I can't stop thinking about you, Emma. It's like you're under my skin. I swallowed hard. My body buzzed with adrenaline, nerves, guilt, and overwhelming desire. Then stop looking, I whispered. He reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from my face. I've tried. Believe me, I've tried. For a moment, we just stood there. The world around us didn't exist. It was just me, him, and everything we'd held back threatening to burst free. Are you going to keep teasing me? He asked. I stared up at him, feeling a part of me snap, break away from the woman who played it safe, who followed the rules, who never asked for more than she was given. Maybe I'm ready to stop pretending, I said. And I kissed him. Not shyly. Not hesitantly. It was the kind of kiss you give when you know it's already too late to undo what's been done. His arms wrapped around me, pulling me into him, and I didn't resist. I didn't think about Josh. I didn't think about the life I had carefully built. All I thought about was how alive I finally felt. When we pulled apart, we were both breathless. He rested his forehead against mine and whispered, "Come to my place. Tonight." I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. And as I drove home, the taste of him still on my lips, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't looking for an escape anymore. I was choosing it. The lie came too easily. I'm going to dinner with Claire and staying at her place overnight, I told Josh as I packed a small overnight bag. Girls' night. He didn't question it. He barely looked up from his laptop. Tell her I said hi, he mumbled, fingers still typing. I paused at the doorway. Part of me waited for him to ask something, anything. A second thought. A reason to pull me back. But silence filled the space between us, like it always did. And so I walked out. Lucas lived in a small apartment on the third floor of a building near the edge of town. Cozy, modern, masculine. When he opened the door, he didn't speak, he just looked at me with that same intensity that had unraveled me piece by piece for weeks. I stepped inside. The air between us was thick with tension. He offered me a drink. I declined. I didn't want to delay the inevitable. I didn't think you'd actually come, he said. I shouldn't have, I whispered, even as I took a step closer to him. And just like that, we collided, his lips crashed into mine, hands gripping my waist, my body pressing into his as though I had been starving for years. I didn't hold back. Neither did he. It was messy, fevered, desperate, like we were trying to erase everything that led us here by drowning in the moment. Clothes were forgotten. Time didn't exist. In his arms, I wasn't a wife or a woman burdened by routine. I was wanted, desired in a way that shook me to my core. There were no words, only gasps, touches, and moans that felt more like confessions than sounds. When it was over, I lay in his bed, tangled in sheets and shame. His arm draped across my bare stomach. For a moment, the world was still. But inside, everything had changed. In the early hours of the morning, I got dressed quietly while Lucas slept. I stood by the window, watching the streetlights flicker, trying to silence the storm inside me. What had I done? I had crossed the line. Not just emotionally, but physically. Entirely. Fully. I had betrayed a man who had never raised his voice at me, who had trusted me, who believed I was his safe place. But somewhere along the way, I had stopped feeling like I belonged to that life. And for one night, I had stepped into a version of myself I hadn't seen in years. A woman who craved more than comfort. A woman who was willing to destroy the familiar just to feel something real. When I walked into our house later that morning, Josh was still asleep. I crawled into bed beside him like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't just set fire to our marriage hours earlier. He stirred slightly, pulling me into him. "Did you have fun?" he mumbled. I froze. "Yeah," I whispered. And then I closed my eyes, hoping I could dream of a world where none of this had happened. But deep down I knew there was no going back. Days passed, but the night with Lucas refused to fade. It lingered in my skin, in my breath, in the weight of every mundane routine I tried to return to. The sheets in our bed felt foreign. The kitchen felt too quiet. Even Josh's presence felt like a reminder of the boundary I had shattered and could never rebuild. I went through the motions, smiling, folding laundry, kissing Josh goodbye in the mornings, but none of it felt real. Not anymore. I kept checking my phone. Lucas hadn't texted right away. And I hated how that made me feel, anxious, exposed, almost abandoned. I told myself I didn't care. That what happened was a one-time thing. A mistake. But it wasn't. 3 days after that night, he messaged, "Lucas, I want more. Tell me I'm not the only one who felt it." My heart dropped. Not because I didn't want more, but because I did. And wanting more meant accepting that I wasn't just cheating on my husband, I was changing the woman I thought I was. That evening, Josh made dinner. He was humming to himself, something he hadn't done in weeks. When I asked why he seemed lighter, he said, "I don't know. You've seemed happier lately. Like something's lifted." I froze. Happier? The irony pierced through me like a blade. He mistook my guilt and distance for joy. And maybe it was a kind of joy, a joy born from danger, from selfishness, from waking up from a sleep I didn't know I was in. "Do you remember us before all this?" he asked, suddenly serious. I nodded. "Yeah, I do. I miss her, the girl I married," he said quietly. I looked down at my plate. I missed her too. But she was gone. Replaced by someone who had stepped into the fire and realized she could never go back to the cold. That night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at my reflection. My makeup was off. My hair was messy. My eyes tired. And yet, in that mirror, I didn't see a villain. I saw a woman who had been starving for connection, for attention, for something raw and real. Someone who had made a choice, messy, flawed, irreversible, but human. My phone buzzed again. "Lucas, say something. Please." I typed out a message. Then deleted it. Then typed again. I felt it too. But I don't know who I am anymore." He replied instantly. "Lucas, then let's find out. Together." The story doesn't end here. Not neatly. Not with a confession or a breakup or some dramatic walkout. It ends in the silence of choices made, and the noise they leave behind. I'm still in this house. Still wearing the face of a wife. But deep down, I know that part of me now lives somewhere else, with a man who saw me when I had forgotten how to be seen. And even if no one ever finds out what I did, I'll always know. 98.